Why don't I go to the Academy Awards?
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Katharine Hepburn.
At 38, Katharine Hepburn revealed a truth that shattered her carefully crafted image. Behind the poised gowns, sharp cheekbones, and blazing independence was a woman who had exchanged her secret girlfriend for a studio-approved romance. And it was not good at all. The confession exposed a heartbreaking compromise. Love traded for survival in a world that punished difference. Hollywood applauded her strength on screen, but demanded silence about her heart. Can you imagine hiding that much of yourself while the cameras demanded truth? This is the story of a woman who conquered every stage but paid dearly in private. And to understand how she reached that moment, we must go back to her earliest days, when the world was already demanding masks. Katharine Hepburn was born in Hartford, Connecticut, in 1907. Her childhood home stood tall and proper, yet alive with voices that questioned authority. Her father, Dr. Thomas Hepburn, fought tirelessly against venereal disease. Her mother, Katharine Houghton, was a suffragist and fierce advocate for women's rights. In that household, truth was demanded, and courage was expected. Yet courage in a progressive home did not shield young Kate from sorrow. At 14, she discovered her brother Tom had died in a tragic accident. For years, she insisted it was suicide, though others debated the cause. His absence carved a deep scar into her heart. To cope, she adopted his birth date as her own, carrying him within every introduction. The world outside Hartford was changing quickly. Jazz filled the air of the 1920s. Hemlines rose, hair was bobbed, and women seized freedoms that had been unimaginable a decade before. Still, shadows lingered. Conversations about sexuality remained taboo. Same-sex attraction was whispered about, but only as scandal. Police raided clubs, and newspapers mocked anyone seen outside convention. Katharine, however, grew bold. She wore trousers at a time when society declared them off-limits. She strode across college campuses at Bryn Mawr with the same confidence she later carried onto sound stages. She dreamed not of marriage, but of performance. Plays offered her escape, a way to shape emotions larger than life. Yet beneath the applause, a quieter desire stirred. Biographers later noted hints of early same-sex affection, friendships that blurred into something deeper, though the language of the era left it unspoken. Her childhood prepared her for battles with critics and studios. Her voice, low and clipped, marked her as unusual. Her willpower, sharpened by family debates, made her unwilling to bow easily. But the Great Depression tightened Hollywood's grip, and the studio system demanded submission. As Katharine looked west, chasing her future, she carried with her both a fiery spirit and a private longing. The journey from Hartford privilege to Hollywood stardom was not straightforward. The girl who once mourned her brother would soon confront another set of losses. The loss of privacy, the loss of open affection, and the burden of constant scrutiny. Before she could become an icon, she had to survive her first brutal years in Hollywood. Katharine Hepburn arrived in Hollywood in the early 1930s with a sharp profile, piercing voice, and the confidence of someone who had already endured heartbreak. She was unlike anyone the studios had seen. At first, they did not know what to do with her. Too aristocratic, too stubborn, too unwilling to smile on command. Her first film, A Bill of Divorcement, in 1932, placed her opposite John Barrymore. Audiences were captivated by her vitality. The studios suddenly realized they had something unusual, perhaps even revolutionary. That same year, she won her first Academy Award for Morning Glory, cementing her place as a force to be reckoned with. But success in Hollywood came with conditions. The studio system of the 1930s was a fortress. Actors were bound by iron contracts. Publicity departments dictated how they dressed, spoke, even whom they courted. For women, the pressure was suffocating. They had to appear glamorous but not threatening, desirable yet pure. Hepburn, with her trousers and quick tongue, tested every boundary. She starred in Little Women in 1933, embodying Jo March with a tomboyish spirit that mirrored her own. Audiences adored it. Yet critics began labeling her difficult. She refused interviews, mocked reporters, and turned down roles she found shallow. The press soon coined the phrase, box office poison, listing her among other stars who resisted easy categorization. Her rebellion made enemies but also carved her image as fiercely independent. Off-screen, she climbed trees, swam in icy lakes, and spoke her mind without hesitation. On-screen, she radiated energy that was both magnetic and unsettling. She was not a soft ingenue. She was something more dangerous. A woman who thought for herself. The turning point came with Bringing Up Baby in 1938. The screwball comedy paired her with Cary Grant. Today the film is a classic, but at the time it flopped. Critics accused her of being shrill, and audiences turned away. For the first time, Hepburn's career faced collapse. She retreated to Broadway, purchased the rights to the Philadelphia story, and crafted a triumphant comeback. When it was adapted to film in 1940, with Cary Grant and James Stewart alongside her, she reclaimed her crown. Yet behind every dazzling performance was an invisible war. The studio insisted on presenting her as heterosexual, parading rumored romances with men like Howard Hughes and Spencer Tracy. The public never knew the truth. Hepburn's deepest affections were directed elsewhere, in places the cameras never followed. The pressure to perform one life in public while living another in secret only grew heavier. Behind the glamour and sharp wit, Katharine Hepburn carried a hidden truth. Biographers and contemporaries noted her attraction to women, though such desires could never be spoken openly in 1930s and 40s Hollywood. The industry was ruled by the Hays Code, morality clauses, and the constant threat of scandal. For Hepburn, this meant constructing a double life. In her private hours, she found companionship with women who understood the same risks. One of her earliest and most enduring connections was reportedly with Laura Harding, a wealthy socialite she met in the 1,930 seconds. Harding became more than a friend. She accompanied Hepburn to sets, traveled with her, and lived in her home for years. To outsiders, she was a companion, or secretary. To those who looked closer, she was something deeper. Later accounts also point to relationships with women in the theater world. Stage rehearsals, private dinner parties, and secluded getaways offered rare chances for intimacy. The language of their affection had to be coded. Letters spoke of devotion in metaphors. Photographs framed them as friends. Yet the bond was unmistakable. In whispers, insiders understood that Hepburn's heart often belonged to women. Hollywood, however, demanded appearances. To protect her career, studio publicity departments carefully staged romances. Hepburn was linked publicly with millionaire Howard Hughes, though their connection was more practical than passionate. With actor Spencer Tracy, she formed a decades-long companionship that became legendary. Tracy was Catholic, married, and bound by obligations he could never break. Their supposed romance suited both. It distracted attention from her private life and gave him a protective shield. They worked together on 9 films, and the image of their enduring love became one of Hollywood's most convincing illusions. But illusions carried heavy costs. At 38, Hepburn admitted to a confidant that she had traded a secret girlfriend for the safety of a sham relationship. The decision protected her career but left her emotionally bereft. Imagine standing on a set, performing love scenes for millions, while the true love of your life had been quietly abandoned to keep your name intact. In the elite mansions of Beverly Hills, private gatherings often buzzed with similar compromises. Actors like Rock Hudson, Cary Grant, and others navigated the same coded world. There was community in secrecy, but also unbearable isolation. Hepburn excelled at hiding in plain sight, retreating to her Connecticut home when rumors grew too sharp. Her relationships with women brought her joy, but they also kept her tethered to a life of discretion. She could never walk hand in hand down Sunset Boulevard. She could never speak openly in interviews. Every smile had to be measured, every companion labeled as a friend. And in that silence, the risk of exposure never faded. The higher she climbed, the greater the fall if truth ever slipped. By the late 1940s, Katharine Hepburn was balancing on a fragile wire. The press had already branded her box office poison once. Another misstep, particularly in her personal life, could have ended her career permanently. Gossip columnists circled like hawks, hungry for any hint of scandal. Whispers about her close female companions were too dangerous to ignore. Studios responded with strict control. Publicists crafted narratives that tied her image to Spencer Tracy. They encouraged photographs of the pair on set, whispered about their private devotion, and sold the story of a love that transcended obstacles. For audiences, it was irresistible. For Hepburn, it was survival. But survival came at a personal cost. Friends recalled her mood shifting between defiance and melancholy. She longed for honesty but knew the price. In that era, an exposed queer romance meant blacklisting. Actors lost contracts, advertisers withdrew, and reputations crumbled. The Hays Code left no space for nuance. Even an accusation could ruin decades of work. During filming, she threw herself into characters with even more ferocity. On screen, she sparred, loved, and triumphed. Off-screen, she buried herself in isolation. Reporters noted her absences from parties and premieres. Biographers described long nights in her Connecticut home, where she walked the grounds alone, restless and weary. Her closest companions felt the strain too. Laura Harding reportedly withdrew as Hepburn's public ties to Spencer Tracy tightened. Other relationships faltered under the weight of secrecy. Every embrace had to be hidden, every affection disguised. Love became something conducted in shadows, always one photograph away from exposure. The crisis deepened in moments when gossip nearly broke through. Confidential magazine thrived on scandal, often targeting stars with rumors of homosexuality. Hepburn's name occasionally surfaced in whispers, though never in print. Each brush with exposure reminded her how precarious her position was. For a woman raised to speak boldly, the forced silence gnawed at her spirit. She had traded authenticity for stability, and stability for stardom. Yet the loneliness was consuming. She once told a friend that she had lived many lives, but never the one she truly wanted. At her lowest, it seemed the screen had devoured her, leaving the woman behind it invisible. As the decades turned, Katharine Hepburn found ways to reclaim herself. By the 1960s, the studio system that once dictated her every move was collapsing. Independent productions and television offered greater freedom. She began to choose projects that reflected her resilience, playing older women of depth rather than chasing ingenue roles. Her partnership with Spencer Tracy continued until his death in 1967. Their public bond remained unchallenged, though she never married him, nor anyone else. After his passing, Hepburn spoke warmly of him but never lingered on details. For her, silence remained the shield. Yet away from cameras, she grew more comfortable surrounding herself with trusted women who offered companionship without judgment. Age softened the threat of scandal. Audiences had already accepted her as eccentric, fiercely private, and defiantly independent. She no longer needed to bow to the machinery of Hollywood publicity. At her Connecticut home, she entertained friends, painted, and walked along the water in solitude. She returned often to the stage, winning respect not only as a star, but as a consummate craftswoman. In the 1980s and 90s, shifting social norms revealed how much had changed since her youth. Younger generations of actors began living openly, embracing the rights Hepburn never dared claim in her prime. She reportedly admired their courage but carried little regret. In interviews, she insisted she had lived life on her terms. Observers, however, sensed the unspoken truth: that survival had required silence, and silence had cost her dearly. Her later years were marked by accolades. She won 4 Academy Awards, more than any actress of her generation. She was hailed as a legend, the embodiment of wit and strength. Yet even in praise, the shadow of her hidden loves remained. Biographers revisited her companionship with women like Laura Harding, casting new light on what the public had long ignored. By the time she passed away in 2003 at the age of 96, the world had shifted. Queer stories were entering the mainstream. The sacrifices she made seemed both unnecessary and tragically inevitable in hindsight. Katharine Hepburn endured an era that demanded masks, and in later years, she reflected with quiet dignity on the choices she made. Her story reminds us that strength sometimes means survival in silence, and that freedom, once denied, leaves an ache that even fame cannot soothe. And yet, in her stubborn independence, she carved a path for women who refused to conform, inspiring those who came after her to fight more openly. Katharine Hepburn's life was a story of triumph shadowed by sacrifice. She rose from a bold child in Hartford to a 4-time Oscar winner. Yet her deepest battles were fought in silence. At 38, she confessed to trading a secret girlfriend for a fabricated romance, and that decision haunted her for decades. Her story is not one of scandal but of survival. In an age when truth meant exile, she built a fortress of independence and wit. The cost was heavy. Love was hidden, affection disguised, and happiness tempered by fear. Yet through it all, she left behind performances that still burn with life. Today, her legacy is complicated but powerful. She reminds us of a generation forced to choose between authenticity and survival. She shows us that brilliance can thrive even under repression, but at a price no one should have to pay. As we watch her on screen, we see not just a star, but a human being navigating impossible choices. Her courage and her compromises continue to echo. What do you think Hepburn's story tells us about Hollywood's golden age and about the price of silence? Share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe for more hidden stories of old Hollywood.